give a brief explanation of the statement, whatever Allah willed to be, shall be, and whatever Allah did not will to be, shall not be. So we say in Arabic, ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن. This is also something among the basics of the belief. This is very important to know and to believe in. That is that whatever Allah eternally, without a beginning, willed to happen, it will happen. It will happen at the time that Allah willed for it to happen. And whatever Allah did not will to happen, it will never happen. So I am giving this lesson now. It means Allah Ta'ala eternally willed for this to be happening right now. I am not at a different location right now because Allah Ta'ala eternally did not will for me to be at a different location right now. Sometimes the person might plan to do something. The person might plan to do something the next day. Maybe that tomorrow you plan on going and buying something for your child or going to a particular place. And then when the next day comes, you might not be doing that. And if you don't do that, it means that Allah Ta'ala did not will for that to happen. So whatever Allah eternally will to happen, it will happen. And whatever Allah Ta'ala eternally did not will to happen, it will never happen. And the scholars say that should, the nation decide to harm you with something, to inflict harm on you in a matter that Allah did not will to happen to you, it will not happen to you. Even if thousands, millions of people gather together and decide to inflict you with harm, if Allah did not will for that to happen, it will not happen. They will not be able to do that. And if Allah willed for something to happen, no one can prevent that from happening. It will for sure happen. And this includes all what is good and what is bad. Now again here, please pay attention here. Everything that comes into existence, it means Allah Ta'ala eternally willed for it to exist. Everything that happens, everything that comes into existence means that Allah Ta'ala eternally willed for it to happen. And this includes both good and bad. What is proper and what is bad. What is of a good deed and what is sinful. Piety and kufr, blasphemy, both happen by the will of Allah. Now, we need to know that there is a difference between will and order. Okay, there is a difference between the will and the order of Allah. Allah Ta'ala willed for both to happen, good and bad. However, Allah Ta'ala orders us to do the good. And Allah Ta'ala forbids us from doing the bad. I will repeat, there's a difference between the will and the order of Allah. Allah Ta'ala willed for both to happen, the good and the bad. Aren't there many, many bad things happening around the world? There are. Aren't there many sins being committed? There are. Aren't many people doing evil acts? There are. Kufr is happening by many people. Allah Ta'ala willed for that. If it happens, it means Allah willed for that. However, Allah does not order that. Allah orders one to do the good and forbids us from doing the sins. And if the slave, if the person chooses to do the bad, and this person is accountable, he deserves the punishment for that. He chose to do that. Of course, if he did that, it means God willed for him to do that, for sure. But this person he has a will. His will is under the will of Allah, but he has a will. If he went and picked up a glass of wine and drank it, he did that by his own choice, by his own will. Nobody forced him to do that if he did that on his own. So if he is accountable and he did that, he deserves the punishment for that. And if it happens, it means, of course, that Allah willed for it to happen. But Allah does not order that. Allah does not order us with committing sins. Allah orders us to do the obligations. So it's important to know that Allah Ta'ala willed for things to happen, whether these things are good or bad. If a person is saying that something happened without the will of Allah, this is opposite to the Islamic belief. This contradicts the Quran. This contradicts the belief of the Prophet alayhi salam. The belief of Muslims is that everything that happens by the will of Allah Ta'ala. Nothing happens in this life if Allah Ta'ala did not will for it to happen. Okay? We move on then to the next question. What is the meaning of La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah? Now, this is a great dhikr, a very, very beneficial dhikr. It is rewardable to say it sincerely, properly. And I've sent this in a video before. The Prophet ﷺ said that this dhikr helps, inshallah, for 90 ailments, and among them is worry. And who among us does not have worries? Many of us have many worries, different worries. And we might have other hardships and difficulties. So this dhikr is of great benefit to say it daily, at least 300 times. This is good. Even if one says it less than that, but it's good to say it daily 300 times. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So what does it mean? This dhikr means that no one can evade sinning except with Allah's protection. And no one has the strength to obey except by Allah's will, Allah's help, except by Allah's help. So what does this mean? If the person does not commit a sin, it means Allah Ta'ala protected him from it. It's with Allah's protection that this person did not commit the sin. So the person thanks Allah Ta'ala. And when the person is doing obedience, doing the obligations, this is of course something very good. And this means that Allah Ta'ala enabled him to do the obligations, to do the good deeds. So one should not pride himself in that. Rather, the person should remember that Allah Ta'ala enabled me to do these good deeds. If I am doing them, it is that because Allah Ta'ala enabled me to do that. And one is to be thankful to Allah. There are people who are committing lots of sins. So if the person is protected from the sins and is doing good deeds, is fulfilling the obligations, this is because Allah Ta'ala helped this person do the obligations. And it is because Allah Ta'ala protected this person from committing sins. So the person thanks Allah for this. And the person does not feel pride in himself. Rather, always the person should remember that Allah Ta'ala is the one endowing upon him with many, many endowments. And we have great endowments, and we really ought to remember these at times of difficulties. Sometimes when the person is stressed or facing a hardship, the person might think of that particular stress that he has and might not forget about all the endowments that he has. When we are able to breathe, this is a great endowment. And we notice that when sometimes, for instance, the person has difficulty breathing, he notices what a great endowment it is to be able to breathe, to have water, to be able to stand, that we have lots and lots of endowments, subhanAllah. So the person should be thankful for that, should thank Allah for them. And how do we thank Allah for the endowments? The obligatory thanking is by using these endowments in obedience and not using them in committing sins. So the obligatory thanking is to not use the endowments that Allah Ta'ala has granted us with in committing sins. We should not. Allah Ta'ala granted me with a hand. I should not use this hand to commit injustice. I should not use my hand in committing sins. Allah Ta'ala granted one with sight. The person should not use his sight in committing sins, such as looking at something that the person is not supposed to look at. And there are many other examples that we will, inshallah ta'ala, talk about them later on when we talk about the sins of the different body parts, and among them are the sins of the eyes. So this is the obligatory thanking by not using the endowments that Allah had granted us with in committing sins. As to the rewardable thanking is to say, of course, Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah. With a sincere intention, this is, of course, good to do. But the obligatory thanking is to not use the endowments in committing sins, to not use them in disobeying Allah, the Creator. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. These